Hey traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. I'll be covering relative strength in this particular video in the series How to Become a Better Trader. What I'd like to cover is relative strength, and in particular sectors exhibiting relative strength. Now, if you listen to any well-known trader, chances are sooner or later you'll hear them say something like XYZ is exhibiting relative strength, while simultaneously commenting on market weakness in the indices. With respect to the spiders, we've seen this movement lower, culminating in a bottom or a pivot on Monday, where we saw this spinning top where buyers and sellers couldn't agree on a price, but we did close near this lower trend line. Now, why should you care about relative strength? Well, let's look at a recent example which, had you heeded my recent Sunday video market read, you could have positioned yourself in some stocks that were set up for a big multi-day swing trade. KRE, the Spider Regional Banking ETF, as we pointed out, was exhibiting some relative strength. Where the spiders were moving lower, the KRE was actually moving horizontally and were capped by this descending trend line. We noted that MACD looked like it was leveling off and getting ready to turn. We had a watch list on Sunday of banks that we were targeting for possible setups. And this was a post from StockTwits on Sunday night's video. Now, this is the same chart a week later that I posted at the end of today with results and a pruned watch list, if you will, and some of these trades that I'm in, namely PACW, SIVB, and Zion. We'll dig into some of these in detail in a few minutes, but for the time being, note the volume here on this breakout of this descending trend line, and note where the Kirby is, and note what MACD is doing. Digging a little deeper, we look at some of the charts which made up the watch list and the criteria for making the watch list, which falls into several defined action items. Namely, I look for volume expansion, I look for action near the moving averages, like, for example, box trade setups or patterns that I might see developing. I look at Kirby, where there'll be less resistance to a move higher, in this case, of a long. I look at Fibonacci levels from this recent pivot up to this recent pivot high. And I look at where price action has come down to. And in this case, on this recent pivot action, the pullback was less than 382, which is signifying that it had greater relative strength. I also look at Kumo and the price action above Tikin-sen as we exploded there. The fact that TK was inclined and sloping higher, noted where Chiku was relative to price. Note that with Chiku, many times you can take previous price action with Chiku and draw a horizontal here, and that many times will define support and resistance in the future. In this case, we had an area here where we have this pivot in Chiku, and we had this pivot high. And once price moved through that level, that resistance zone was left behind. So that's just one other thing that I look at with regard to trading, watching where prices are relative to Chiku, Tikin-sen, and Kijun-sen, as well as the Kumo when I'm trading. Also note that price action since January has been bullish, and it was above the cloud the entire time that we've been watching this particular chart. We came down, we touched Kumo, and we moved out of here. We trended for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then we consolidated here in this triangle pattern. And then once we broke out on volume, things began to look really good. So we saw this Last week, when Kramer was talking about it on Wednesday, we took a look at the charts and we saw relative strength in this sector. Early in the week, I noted that we saw the other sectors, price action was below the 20 period and the 50 period on every case except for KRE, which was showing price action above the 20 period and breaking above or peaking above this trend line if you drew across here, connecting these highs. So we were seeing relative strength early on when this was posted on June 25th, as well as the day previous to that. We were watching how price action stayed inside of this area here between the 20 and the 50 period, and we saw buyers coming in early towards the middle of last week. Now, if we go through some of the charts that we saw in these sectors, in particular, some of these are PAC West or Pacific West banks, part of the regional sectors. We can see the same thing. We saw a nice move on the MACD. We saw a breakout of a pattern. We saw the trend line. We saw prices moving above the moving averages. So everything was set to move, along with the other regionals, which we'll look at here. We have a nice move in the spiders, and KRE now is really taking off. Continuing on, PBCT is looking quite well with its relative strength pushing prices higher as the spiders reversed and are moving higher on Monday. KRE continues to move higher as the spiders have reversed as well. CMA is looking good. We have these highs here. And if we draw some fibs from this recent pivot low up to this pivot high, we can get an idea of some targets. Note that we came down to the 50% retracement, but the 127 extension is up here at 43. East West Bank Corp, we pointed out as well on our list. Note that MACD, stochastics is embedded, but MACD has given us a crossover and histogram is moving higher. So that I like to use the two of these together. This shows that stochastics can stay embedded. We have these pivots, in which case we're right through the 127 extension, and there's a possibility we could come up to the 1618 extension up here as a target. FMER, First Merit Corp, we mentioned last week as well that you could take this trade with a stop under the 10 period EMA and hope for this to continue to move higher. You could plan for this to continue to move higher up the 10 period, which has been holding price for a number of months now. So that's exactly what happened with the rest of the sector turning with the relative strength relative to the spiders. Hudson City Bank Corp, same thing. We had broke above this level. Note the Kirby up here. Note the MACD histogram was signaling that stochastics would likely get embedded. Washington Federal WAFD noted the pivots. This high at 127 extension, we hit the 1618 nearly, and we seem to be pulling a little bit back from there. MACD histogram and stochastics both showing that we could get embedded here. Valley is a little bit behind the curve, but if we watch this trend line break, note the crossover of the 10 period, 30 period. We could watch this one as well. We've got about 50 cents on this so far. And of course the last one on our list was Zion. We looked at this 127 extension possibility up here, the Kirby that we have over on this side, and note MACD histogram. This isn't as strong as SIVB, which we're entirely out of now. There was an 11-point run on this one. Note the stochastics. Note is embedded. Note the histogram. And also the fib targets that we had, the 1618, we tagged almost to the penny. And now we're pulling back a little bit from that point. At this point, it's $2.56 up for the day, so that was a nice trade if you entered this trade on this box setup last week, week before last, sorry. Okay, so I hope this helps. explain relative strength and give you a better idea of what you should be looking for when you're scanning the markets for sectors to trade. Looking at our candle glance again, just to reiterate, we'll look at our sectors and note where KRE is now. Previously in the video, in the beginning, we were just breaking out of this little descending trend line. And now we can see that the KRE, relative to the other spider sectors, is doing quite well. Okay, so I hope this helps. Remember to set up something like this so that you can review these each day to see where the strength in the market is coming and where you can position your trades accordingly. Okay, this is Cousin Vinny coming to you from the Closing Print. Come and check us out. I hope this has helped you in some way. Take care.